Do we have the internal capability to help ourselves mentally? Are we able to overcome our fears, traumas, anger, sadness, and anxiety, and have enough control over our minds just to have enough peace and feel happier? What is the ultimate evolution of the mind? These questions are not new. They have been pursued and asked in ancient India at least 2,600 years ago. The most systematized answers came from Buddha Shakyamuni, an Indian prince who reached the ultimate goal of his practices to gain full control of his mind, which was called many words: enlightenment, awakening, bodhi, liberation, nirvana, going beyond, perfect knowledge and wisdom, transcendence, spiritual awakening, illumination. The knowledge and methods came from the Buddha, the awakened one, based on his experience and realizations of studying the mind. What I call the psych, psychology and psychotherapy, are new kids on the block, studied the body instead, asserting that the mind is the function of the brain, although basing most of their therapy types on Buddhist knowledge. They experimented with their own ideas based on their thinking and not on the enlightened experience, experimented with drugs and tobacco and became addicted to them, developed the paradigm of dependency on drugs and practitioner for the permanent patients that can never change and get better and stay paying customers forever. Let's finally understand where modern psychology came from and what came before it, so we're well informed. Welcome to the Empowerment Club, where we work on stress management and goal achievement to become our best versions. In today's episode, let's take a look at history of the so-called psychology. Let's understand what we can change, how we can feel and become our best versions, even as far as enlightenment versions, let alone let go of our fears. Subscribe to the channel and like, share, and give us comments to help us fulfill our mission to bring empowerment to 1 million people. Thank you very much for being here. I'm not here to convert you to become a Buddhist. Of course, I will be happy if you decide to. I have respect for others' religious beliefs. Even though I'm a practicing Buddhist, my purpose today is to look at the self-help, self-development, meditation to improve our happiness, mental peace, and strength, develop resilience, increase joy, and become largely unaffected by all that life throws at us. We are going to look at this in a historical manner rather than a religious way. Buddhism also transcends the concept of what is typically known as a religion. How many times we have heard that people have been in therapy all their life, still unable to process and move on from their grief, loss, traumas, and post-traumatic stress disorder. Just recently, a famous brain doctor mentioned that his wife had a difficult childhood and still processing the trauma. These are people in their 60s. It is obvious, unless we work with the mind, nothing is going to change, and we can die with the same emotions and thoughts. Do you realize that even the early humans were searching for freedom from stress? In what way, you will say? Well, being fearful of the wild animals, having to hunt and gather for food often, being cold and hot, sick and dying, children being born, lack of medicine and hygiene and clean water, lack of safe and weatherproof shelter. If you think you're stressed now, how about we throw you into this situation? How will you fare? I'm sure you will be living in fear and aggression. Why is it that even though the conditions, medicines, and knowledge have improved so much, but we continue to have high levels of stress and almost the same as the primitive man? Well, we have replaced the predominantly physical dangers with mental ones. Let's exclude the roles of the governments, rulers, politicians, those with ability to control and oppress us. These are still external animals. There is no question about the fact that our reaction, our stress response depend on how much our mind can handle unpleasant stuff and all kinds of mental suffering. Let's take a look at the history from the ancient times till now. Doing this is going to help us have a perspective on the mind training and the source of mental strength, resilience, becoming your own therapist, and the self-reliance is absolutely critical, especially this time when Even our human existence may be at stake on this planet. Emotions, thoughts, and powerful sensations of stress response rule us all day, every day. We need a way out. The only way out is the way inward. Let's take a look at the ancient India before Buddha Shakyamuni was born. India is the cradle of spirituality and enlightenment in the world. They are the pioneers and torchbearers going to great lengths to discover the philosophy and the methods of mind training, meditation, yogic disciplines, prayer, of faith and devotion, studying the universe, mathematics, and so much more. There is no point for us to look at other locations in the world, as there was no known focus anywhere else on the inner development of the mind. Hail India! Pre-Buddha Indian spirituality. The world that shaped Siddhartha, the Buddha, before he became the Buddha. Vedic religion, 1500 to 600 BCE. Ritual, sacrifice, and priesthood. The earliest spiritual system in India was Vedic. Key features: highly ritualistic, focused on fire offerings. Brahmin priests controlled spiritual system. Liberation was not the central goal. Prosperity, health, children, rain were. Gods were natural forces: Indra, Varuna, Agni, Soma, Dharma. Humans needed priests. Priests performed rituals, goals provided results. No personal enlightenment. No inner work. This is the original, eternal patient paradigm. I cannot solve my own suffering. I must rely on someone else. Emergence of the Upanishads, 800 to 500 BCE. Inner search begins. This was a radical shift. Key ideas: the divine is not outside, but inside. True liberation comes from self-knowledge. Who am I becomes the essential question. Atman, self, Brahman, ultimate reality. The Upanishads rejected the priest-centric worldview and moved towards direct realization. Spiritual emphasis: meditation, introspection, withdrawal from worldly distractions. Understanding the mind, realizing the true self. This is the birth of psychology meets mysticism. Shramana movement, 6th to 5th century BCE, renunciation and liberation. Parallel to the Upanishadic traditions emerged the Shramana traditions, wandering seekers. These included early yogis, ascetics, Jains, Ajivikas, materialists, who were called Charvakas. Key ideas: liberation is not personal, is personal, not ritualistic. Meditation and prayer, ethical living and offerings, mind training and priestly authority, karma, rebirth, suffering, release, moksha or nirvana. This movement is the closest pre-Buddha psychology. It treated the mind, habits, impulses, cravings, and suffering as things that can be understood and healed from within. The Indian yogic tradition, pre-classical yoga before Patanjali and formal yoga sutras, yoga already existed as breath control, concentration practices, sensory withdrawal, stillness, equanimity, inner observation. Its purpose: to transform consciousness, not fitness, not religion. It was early mind training similar to modern psychotherapy, but focused on liberation from suffering rather than symptom relief. The problem of suffering: before Buddhism, before Siddhartha, spiritual seekers were already asking, why does the mind suffer? Can we overcome desire? Is liberation possible while living? Can meditation free us from mental disturbance? This is exactly the transition from religion to consciousness science. Siddhartha's work, the meeting of two paradigms. When the future Buddha was born, two systems coexisted: Vedic ritual religion, external authority, external gods, external solutions depending on specialists, priests, the patient model. Yogic Upanishadic Shramana inner search, personal authority, inner exploration, mental discipline, meditation, self-liberation, therapist within model. Siddhartha inherited both worlds and chose the second. His enlightenment was the completion of a movement already underway, moving from ritual to psychology to liberation. Now we will move on to the Buddha's arrival. He is going to take everything to the next level. The Buddha's arrival, a complete breakthrough in human psychology. By the time Siddhartha Gautama appeared around 480 to 400 BCE, India already had ritual-based Vedic religion. Philosophical Upanishads, renunciants, and yogis exploring liberation, but no one had created a practical step-by-step testable method for ending suffering available to everyone, not just monks, thinkers, or priests. The Buddha's arrival is often seen as the moment psychology was born, because he was brought a new model of the mind, not a soul, not a spirit, a process. The Buddha introduced the idea that the mind is dynamic, constantly changing, shaped by habits, trainable, observable in real time. This was the first systematic cognitive science: thoughts, emotions, actions, consequences. In modern terms, cognition leads to affectation, and that leads to behavior. He replaced metaphysical explanations with psychological causations. The first complete science of suffering. He boldly stated suffering has causes. If causes end, suffering ends. This is the opposite of fate, karma as destiny, divine will, punishment, cosmic design. Instead, he framed suffering as a solvable problem, and he offered the first therapy model: identify symptoms, diagnose cause, discover that the condition is curable, follow the treatment plan. This is the Four Noble Truths, which is essentially psychology before the word existed. No one before him had turned suffering into a science of mind training. The method, a toolkit for inner transformation. The Buddha didn't teach doctrines, he taught methods. Most revolutionary were mindfulness, sati, observation without judgment. For the first time in history, one could watch thoughts like clouds without identifying with them, without repressing them, without indulging them. This is the basis for modern therapies: ACT, CBT, DBT, MBSR, trauma work, somatic therapy. Every major modern psychotherapy owes something to this breakthrough. Insight meditation, vipassana, seeing the true nature of thoughts, urges, emotions as impermanent, conditioned, not you. This is the original method of cognitive diffusion. A thought is just a thought. Compassion training, metta, karuna. The Buddha was the first to teach compassion not as a virtue, but as a psychological skill that rewires the brain. Modern affective neuroscience agrees. A radical social breakthrough. Before the Buddha, access to philosophy, spirituality was elite. Rituals were controlled by priestly classes. Women and lower castes had almost no access to higher knowledge. The Buddha shattered this. He opened the path to women, workers, farmers, royalty, foreigners, outcasts. He created the world's first open-source liberation system. No gatekeepers, no secret rituals, no caste restrictions, no metaphysical threats. Just a method anyone can test. Self-directed liberation, perhaps his most revolutionary idea. Be your own lamp, be your own refuge. He removed dependence on authorities, priests, gurus, external saviors, rituals, tradition, supernatural beliefs. For the first time, a complete system said, you can heal and liberate your mind by understanding it. This is exactly my theme, moving beyond the eternal patient paradigm, becoming your own therapist. The Buddha was the earliest known figure to fully articulate this. A non-theistic path. He did something unprecedented. He didn't deny gods. He didn't affirm them. He simply made them not so relevant to liberation, meaning your freedom doesn't depend on cosmic beings, it depends on your mental habits. This was a psychological revolution. Evidence-based, experiment-based. The Buddha told his followers, do not believe anything, test it yourself. This is the first known articulation of empirical method, inner science, phenomenology. It resembles modern scientific psychology more than ancient religion. A few moments later, meaning around 2,450 years later, psychology becomes a so-called science. That's how all the trouble starts. Early foundations, ancient Greece, 1800s. Greek thinkers like Plato, Aristotle, and the Stoics asked questions about emotion, reasoning, behavior, and self-control. But psychology as a science did not yet exist. The church dominated Europe for 1,500 years, so inner life was mostly discussed in religious terms: sin, repentance, soul. Psychology becomes a science in late 1800s, our era. Western psychology officially began when Wilhelm Wundt 1879, Germany created the first psychology lab. The goal was to study the mind using experiments and measurements, not philosophy. Early schools developed structuralism, analyzing the structure of consciousness, behaviorism, studying only observable behavior, psychoanalysts Freud from 1900s, unconscious conflicts, childhood dreams. Cognitive psychology, 1950s to 70s, the brain as an information processing system. Western psychology was primarily scientific, analytical, and behavior focused. Modern psychology, 1980s to today. This includes cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, mindfulness-based therapies, trauma science, somatic therapies, neuroscience, positive psychology, self-regulation, motivation, peak performance research. Modern psychology is much more practical, focused on stress, habits, attention, emotional regulation, success, and well-being. Freud, Jung, and Eastern ideas. Freud ignored Eastern traditions, but Carl Jung studied Indian philosophies closely: Upanishads, yoga, Tibetan Buddhism, mandalas. He believed in East. The East understood the inner mind more deeply than the West. 1960s to 70s, huge wave of Eastern influence. Western thinkers studied yoga, Buddhism, Zen, Vedanta. This directly influenced humanistic psychology, Maslow, interpersonal psychology, the idea of self-actualization, meditation research. The mindfulness movement came from this period. Modern psychotherapy is strongly influenced by Buddhism. This is the biggest connection. Today's therapies use Buddhist concepts: mindfulness from Vipassana, non-attachment from Buddhism, acceptance, ACT therapy, compassion training, metta, observing thoughts as thoughts, cognitive diffusion. Nearly every modern therapy acknowledges Buddhist influence, not Vedic. Neuroscience confirms ancient meditation practices. Brain imaging shows meditation changes the prefrontal cortex, reduces anxiety circuits, increases emotional stability. This is why Western psychology now embraces Eastern methods more than ever before. Let's take a look at psychotherapy here. History of psychotherapy. Psychotherapy, as we know it, is quite young. 1800s. Talking cure begins. People with emotional distress were still seen as possessed, weak, or morally wrong. Jean-Martin Charcot, Paris, and Joseph Brewer, Vienna, began using hypnosis and talking methods. This leads directly to Freud. 1890s, 1939, Freud and psychoanalysis. Freud creates the first full psychotherapy system. Focus on unconscious, conflicts, childhood experiences, dreams, free association. No Buddhist influence yet. Freud openly rejected Eastern ideas. 1920 to 1960, behaviorism, Watson, Skinner, Pavlov. Treatment equaled changing habits and behaviors. Scientific but zero focus on inner awareness. Still no Buddhist influence. 1940 to 1980, humanistic psychology, Rogers, Maslow, Gestalt therapy, focus on self-growth, authenticity, present moment. This is the first Western movement to become open to Eastern ideas, especially Zen and meditation. 1960s to 1970s, first contact with Buddhism. This is the turning point. Major events. Zen and Vipassana teachers arrive in the West. Beat writers like Alan Watts, Jack Kerouac popularized meditation. Carl Jung studies Eastern philosophy deeply. Upanishads, yoga, Buddhism. Western psychologists begin learning meditation. This creates the foundation for mindfulness-based psychotherapy. 1979, mindfulness enters clinical psychology. This is the most important date. John Kabat-Zinn creates MBSR, mindfulness-based stress reduction, at the University of Massachusetts Medical School. His sources: Theravada, Vipassana, Zen mindfulness, Satipatthana Sutta. Practices. He removes religious language and keeps the psychology. This becomes the root of all modern mindfulness therapies. 1980s to present. Cognitive and mindfulness therapies merge Western cognitive psychology and Buddhist mindfulness. Modern psychotherapy revolution. New therapies develop: CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, not directly Buddhist, but adopts Observe your thoughts. Do not believe them automatically. This is similar to Vipassana insight. ACT, acceptance and commitment therapy. Very strong Buddhist influence. Ideas from the Buddha, acceptance, non-attachment, observing thoughts, impermanence, values-based living. ACT creator Stephen Hayes openly acknowledges Buddhist roots. DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy, developed by Marsha Linehan, integrates Zen mindfulness techniques, emotion regulation, distress tolerance, non-judgmental awareness. Mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, MBCT, direct blend of CBT and Buddhist meditation, used for depression relapse, integrates breath awareness, observing thoughts, acceptance. Somatic therapies, modern trauma therapies, Buddhist-inspired body awareness, breath, grounding in the present. When psychotherapy absorbed Buddhist methods, the time what happened? 500 BCE, Buddha comes and develops mindfulness, insight, compassion training. 1850 to 1850, Western psychology unaware of Buddhism. 1950 to 1970, first Western psychologists study Zen and Vipassana. 1979, MBSR created, first scientific Buddhist-based clinical program. 1980 to 2000, mindfulness-based psychotherapy grows. 2000 to present, global integration of Buddhist methods into therapy. What are brainwaves? Brainwaves are patterns of electrical activity created by neurons communicating in our brain that change depending on what you're doing and how you're feeling. History of mind influencing brainwaves. In 1924, Hans Berger invents the EEG. German psychiatrist first recorded human brainwaves, discovered alpha and beta waves, realized mental states change electrical activity. 1930s to 1950s, early discoveries. Researchers observed relaxation increases alpha, mental effort increases beta. Meditators produced unusually strong alpha-theta waves, first scientific connection to contemplative traditions. 1960s, neurofeedback emerges. U.S. researchers Joe Kamiya, Barry Sturman found people could learn to increase or decrease certain brain waves with feedback. Kamiya trained people to increase alpha. They reported feeling calm. Sturman trained cats and humans to increase SMR, a beta subtype, improved focus, and this began modern self-regulating training. 1970s, meditation research begins seriously. Herbert Benson, Harvard, studied TM, practitioners, transcendental meditation, showed lower heart rate, strong alpha waves, relaxation response. Western psychology begins adopting breath work, attention control, mindfulness principles, years before mindfulness became mainstream. 1980s to 2000s, mindfulness and brain wave studies, EEG and fMRI studies on Buddhist monks. Findings: long-term meditators produce very high gamma during compassion meditation, strong alpha-theta during focused attention. These findings influenced mindfulness-based stress reduction, acceptance and commitment therapy, cognitive therapies incorporating breath and awareness. 2010s to today. Consumer neurotech, brain sensing headbands, Muse, Emotive, VR mindfulness programs, closed loop biofeedback apps. All are based on the principle you can influence your brainwaves using attention, breath, visualization, and relaxation. How the mind controls the brain waves, scientifically. Here are the mechanisms. No mystery, no magic. Attention shifts brain waves. When you focus on something calming, the brain reduces beta, thinking, increases alpha, calm alertness. This is why meditation, nature gazing, slow movement increase alpha activity. Breathing changes brain rhythms. Scientific finding: slow breathing, 4 to 6 breaths per minute, activates the vagus nerve, reduces arousal, promotes alpha, theta brain waves. Fast, shallow breath increases stress response, promotes beta waves. Visualization, mental imagery, relaxing or empowering, influences heart rate, muscles, hormonal activity. This leads to brainwave shifts. Elite athletes use this to enter flow, high alpha plus gamma. Body posture, relaxed body, more alpha, tension, more beta. This is why progressive muscle relaxation, gentle movement change brain activity. Repetition creates brainwave habits. Practices like various methods work because every state repeated becomes easier. Neural pathways strengthen, brainwaves align faster with intention. This is called neuroplasticity. To wrap up our conversation, let's go back to Freud for a moment, as he might be the one who created an industry of mental dependency on a practitioner. Cocaine. In the 1980s, Freud began experimenting with cocaine. He initially believed it was a wonder drug that could treat depression, anxiety, indigestion, and even morphine addiction. He used it himself frequently, both orally and some sources suggest through injection. Freud wrote glowing scientific papers about its effects, calling it helpful for mood, energy, and even as an aphrodisiac. Later, when cases of addiction and side effects, psychosis, dependency, and death became undeniable, he faced criticism for promoting it. Tobacco. Freud was a heavy cigar smoker through his life, up to 20 cigars a day. This habit led to cancer of the jaw and mouth, for which he underwent over 30 painful surgeries. He continued smoking even after repeated warnings from doctors. Do you want to trust the guy who had addictions to cocaine and cigars to such extent? Isn't the delirium we hear from his writings the result of being out of it on drugs? Should we be trusting into better methods that come from enlightening oneself and others? As far as I'm concerned, it's not a question. I'm on the path to enlightenment fully and for more than 20 years. I'm not saying you are ready for it or that I can deliver this path to you personally at this stage. But here's the deal. We have to have a better deal than we currently have. The deal of anxiety, self-centeredness, lack of peace, focus, and clarity, lack of self-esteem and confidence. I have created a method just for you because you are like me. You don't like to feel crappy and disempowered. You don't like low self-esteem and confidence. You don't like anxiety and depression that you don't know how to work with. I consider myself a private researcher in mind sciences, having studied Buddhist philosophy and having done various Buddhist practices, having been an acupuncturist and a mind coach. I wanted a faster improvement and a way to lead a more empowered life and eliminate most mental garbage. It only made sense for me to create a method inspired by knowledge of physiology, biofeedback research studies, Buddhist concepts and traditional Chinese medicine studies, and various Western mind techniques I have encountered and practiced myself. My method is called Feeling Freedom Method. It is a registered trademark. We will go over the details of it in the next video. With the methods that took roots in my own self-empowerment, we use the tools and information from the biofeedback science, the methods from mind training taught by the Buddha, scientific information on physiology and Chinese medicine science that spans for 3,000 years. Are you curious? I'm sure you are. I have the 52 weeks of empowerment program for you, where you learn and practice self-empowerment through meditational awareness training daily and weekly lessons to empower you to understand the various aspects of stress so you can master yourself. We also set goals and vision and work with actions. This is fundamental to the method as we are liberating ourselves by letting go of our mental limitations. Only goals can push our buttons and show us our weaknesses. Since we all have goals and want something, we may as well use the goals to remove our mental limitations of patterns, thinking, emotions, past traumas, and whatever else we may find that stops us from becoming our better versions. Come along, check out the links in the description to the program and to the overview of the program. I see you on the inside, champions. Freedom state of mind is the secret to success. Our program is unique in the world, cutting edge, available 24/7 with your coach, myself, vested in new improvements. Nobody else has a program like that, for sure. You can also check out my book, Mental Yoga Transforms Stress and Anxiety into Mental Strength and Success. You can purchase it on Amazon and check out my personal stories and my work with stress. We need to learn to flow like a river around obstacles and to move like a palm tree in the wind. That is the objective of our online program, 52 Weeks of Empowerment, so you become the best version of yourself. Life is stress, stress is life. This is what you're going to encounter. So you need to be forewarned and forearmed. And this forearming is going to come in the 52 Weeks of Empowerment program. So please check out the links in the video description below. Here I'm including some links in the description and the global code and the India code for a discount for you to join the program, to encourage you to join, to become your best version. I look forward to seeing you on either platforms. Train your mind with us, become mentally strong, become resilient, become happy, free, and empowered, as well as discover your innate confidence, which is the source of all success, happiness, and great performance.